This episode of Pod Session is brought to you by topnaturalhealth.com, your go-to source for nature-based supplements, skincare, and anti-aging products. Visit their site for special promo code pricing on all of the products mentioned in this episode. Now here's your hosts.
Welcome to the Deep Dive. Today we're looking into a really tough but important true crime story. It's one many of you asked about, based on the Netflix documentary Into the Fire. The lost daughter and, other related sources we've gathered.
Yeah, it's a complex case. Our goal today is really to unpack the key parts, the disappearance itself, the long search for the truth, and kind of the aftermath.
Exactly. We've got quite a bit to draw on articles, podcast clips, even a Reddit AMA with the director, perspectives from adoptees, news reports, a lot to sift through. And before we really dive in, just a quick mention of our sponsor, topnaturalhealth.com. If you're interested in natural supplements, skincare, anti-aging stuff, you can check them out at topnaturalhealth.com or use the link in our description. They've got some special discounts for our listeners.
Right. So the core of this, it's the disappearance of Aundria Bowman back in March 1989. She was just 14.
And initially, it was treated like she'd just run away. That was the story for decades.
For over 20 years, yeah. It wasn't until 2010 when her biological mother, Cathy Terkanian, found out Aundria had been missing since '89 that things really started to change.
And that kicked off this incredible, relentless search by Cathy. Just a decade-long fight for answers.
Which ultimately uncovered a really tragic, horrifying truth involving Aundria's adoptive father, Dennis Bowman.
Let's lay out the facts as we understand them. Aundria Bowman. She wasn't born with that name, right?
No, she was born Alexis Miranda Badger. That was in June 1974.
And her biological mother, Cathy Terkanian, gave her up for adoption when she was about 10 months old.
Around that age, yeah.
Yeah.
The sources suggest there were some pretty significant family pressures involved in that decision.
Okay. And she was adopted by Dennis and Brenda Bowman, and that's when her name was changed to Aundria.
Correct. Then fast forward to March 1989, Dennis Bowman calls the police.
Right. He reports Aundria, 14 years old, missing from their house in Hamilton, Michigan.
And his story was, specific. He said the door was unlocked, some cash was gone, a carry-on bag, and Aundria's purple jacket.
He and Brenda, the adoptive mother, they painted a picture of Aundria as being troubled.
Yeah, they claimed she stole things, used drugs, lied, basically building this narrative that she was the kind of kid who would run away.
And the authorities, at least initially, they bought it.
It seems so. They classified it as a runaway case. And that was pretty much it for a long time.
It's just stalled. It's chilling.
Yeah.
So nothing happens for years and years until 2010.
Right. 2010, the adoption agency contacts Cathy Terkanian out of the blue.
Why? What do they want?
They needed her DNA. They were trying to identify a body and Jane Doe and thought it might be Aundria.
Wow. So did they think Aundria was dead?
Well, they were trying to rule her out or in for this unidentified body. It turned out not to be Aundria.
Okay, but the impact on Cathy.
Huge, because that's how she found out. That call was the first time she learned her daughter hadn't just grown up and moved on, but had actually been missing since 1989.
I can't even imagine. That must have just flipped her world upside down.
Absolutely, and that's what ignited her own investigation. She decided she had to find out what happened.
Cathy's determination here is incredible. And speaking of taking action for well-being, this might be a good moment to remind folks about topnaturalhealth.com. Taking care of yourself is important, especially when dealing with difficult topics. They offer natural products, and there's a link in the description for those discounts.
Definitely important. So Cathy starts her search. What does she do first?
She goes online, basically. Creates a Facebook page, Find Aundria M. Bowman.
Smart. Using social media to connect with people.
Exactly. Trying to find anyone who knew Aundria back then, friends, classmates, anyone. Hoping someone, somewhere, had a piece of the puzzle.
And did it work? Did people come forward?
Yes. And one contact was particularly significant. A local woman named Meta McLeod reached out.
Meta McLeod. Okay, what was her story?
Meta had her own traumatic experience. She told Cathy she'd been abducted and sexually assaulted as a child.
Oh, my.
Yeah. And it happened in the same area around Allegan County, Michigan. And get this, it was September 1989.
September 89. Just months after Aundria disappeared in March.
Exactly. The timing, the location, it felt connected to Meta. And potentially to Cathy, too.
Did Meta have any idea who attacked her?
Well, as she learned more about Aundria's case and about Dennis Bowman, she started to suspect it was him.
Dennis Bowman, Aundria's adoptive father.
Yeah. It was a growing suspicion for Meta.
Wow. So what did Cathy do with that information? That's huge.
She took it seriously. She actually worked with a forensic artist, Carl Koppelman, I believe, to create a sketch based on Meta's description of her attacker.
Did Meta recognize the sketch?
More than that. When she eventually saw photos of Dennis Bowman, she identified him as the man she believed attacked her.
That's a bombshell. Identifying Dennis Bowman in connection with another violent crime right around the same time Aundria vanished.
Absolutely. It completely shifted the focus of Cathy's investigation onto him. It wasn't just about finding a missing girl anymore.
No, now it was about potential abuse, potentially something much darker connected to the adoptive father himself.
So Cathy starts digging deeper into Dennis Bowman. She reaches out to Aundria's friends again, people who knew her back then.
And what did they say? Did they know anything?
Tragically, yes. Several people came forward and said that Aundria had told them. She'd confided in them that Dennis was abusing her.
Physically?
Sexually.
Both. Reports of physical and sexual abuse by her adoptive father.
Oh, Aundria. So she wasn't just a troubled teen running away. She was potentially running from something horrific.
Exactly. It painted a completely different and frankly horrifying picture of her home life compared to what the Bowmans told the police back in '89.
This must have just solidified Cathy's worst fears about Dennis Bowman.
It seems so. She became more and more convinced he was involved, so she used the Freedom of Information Act, FOIA.
To get official record.
Yeah, she requested Dennis Bowman's criminal history.
Was there anything? Oh, yeah. It revealed a serious criminal past. Details aren't always specified in every source, but enough to be deeply concerning.
Which would only strengthen her suspicion that he was capable of, well, the worst.
Definitely. At this point, Cathy became convinced Dennis had murdered Aundria. And she developed a specific theory.
Which was?
That he'd buried her body right there on their property, probably in the backyard.
That's a chilling thought, and she held on to that belief.
Fiercely. It drove her to become much more public, much more confrontational.
How so? What did she do?
She put up posters, billboards with Aundria's picture, really tried to keep the case visible in the community.
And the camping outside their house, that actually happened?
Yes. She literally set up camp outside the Bowman's home for a while. A very direct, impossible to ignore statement.
Wow. Just demanding answers. Did she try talking to Brenda Bowman directly?
She did. She confronted Brenda, tried to get information, tried to appeal to her somehow. It's unclear how much Brenda knew or was willing to say at that point.
This whole period must have been incredibly intense. Cathy essentially waging this one-woman campaign against him.
Absolutely. Relentless pressure. And, dealing with such heavy material, it's a good time to think about our own resilience. Our sponsor, topnaturalhealth.com, offers products to support health and well-being. Check out the link in the description.
Good reminder. So this goes on for years, Cathy's fight. What finally breaks the case? Is it related to her efforts?
Indirectly, perhaps, by keeping the pressure on. But the big break came from somewhere else entirely. November 2019.
Okay, what happened?
Dennis Bowman gets arrested. But he's in Norfolk, Virginia. And it's not for Aundria's case initially.
But Aundria? Then what for?
It was for a cold case from 1980. The rape and murder of a woman named Kathleen Doyle. 1980. Wow. How did they connect him after all that time?
DNA. Advances in DNA technology finally linked him to that crime scene from decades earlier.
So his past finally caught up with him, but for a different crime.
Exactly. He was convicted for Kathleen Doyle's murder and got 2 life sentences in Virginia.
Okay, so he's locked up for life anyway. But how does this connect back to Aundria?
Because while he was jailed in Virginia, waiting for sentencing or after, he made a phone call.
To who?
To Brenda, his wife, Aundria's adoptive mother. And the call was recorded.
And he talked about Aundria.
He confessed. He told Brenda what happened back in March 1989.
What did he say? What was his story?
He claimed that on March 11th, the day she disappeared, Aundria was actually packing a bag.
To run away, like he originally said.
Yes, but he added a crucial detail. She was packing to run away and report his abuse. She was going to tell someone.
Oh, God. So he knew she was going to expose him.
That's what he claimed. He said he confronted her, got angry, and he struck her.
He hit her?
Yes. And according to his confession, the blow caused her to fall down a flight of stairs. He claims she broke her neck in the fall and died.
He claimed it was an accident, a fall.
That was the initial narrative in that confession, yes. An accident resulting from him striking her in anger.
Yeah.
But then he described what he did after.
Okay. What did he say he did?
He said he hid her body, first, in a barn on their property.
Hid her there?
Temporarily. He also burned her belongings, her clothes, the bag, everything, trying to get rid of evidence.
And the body.
Later, And this is horrific, he dismembered her body with an axe.
Ooh.
Dismembered her. He said it was to make her remains fit into a container, a barrel.
Oh my God, that's not an accident.
No. And he buried that barrel in their backyard.
Just like Cathy suspected.
Exactly like Cathy had suspected for years, but it gets worse. When the family moved houses later on, he dug up the barrel.
You took it with them.
Yes. He took the barrel containing Aundria's remains and reburied it at their new home.
Unbelievable. So, with this confession, authorities in Michigan finally had what they needed.
Yes. Based on that recorded confession, in February 2020, Michigan authorities charged Dennis Bowman with Aundria's murder, second-degree murder.
And did he fight it?
No, he pleaded guilty. That was on May 15th, 2020.
So guilty plea, confession. But they still didn't have Aundria's body at that point?
Correct. He'd confessed what he did broadly, but not where the remains were currently buried. That was still missing.
How did they finally find her?
It took more time. In December 2021, authorities made him an offer.
What kind of offer?
Essentially, a chance to serve his Michigan sentence in a Michigan prison, closer to, well, whatever family he might have had left, instead of Virginia, but only if he gave them the exact location, a full confession about where Aundria was buried.
Did he take it?
He did. That's when he finally told Brenda the specific details of the burial location at the second home.
And Brenda relayed that to the investigators?
Yes. And based on that information, detectives finally knew where to dig.
So they excavated the yard at the second Bowman residence?
They did. And they found her.
In the barrel?
Yes. Aundria's remains were found inside a barrel, reportedly in multiple bags, which seemed to confirm his story about the dismemberment.
God. After all those years, Cathy finally had confirmation. Horrific confirmation, but proof.
The end of a very, very long and painful search for the truth.
And again, as we absorb this, just a reminder that taking care of ourselves matters. TopNaturalHealth.com is there with natural products if you need support. Link in the description.
So, Aundria's remains are recovered. What happens next?
Well, Brenda Bowman apparently made the decision to have Aundria's remains cremated.
Okay. And did she give them to Cathy?
She gave half of the ashes to Cathy. Only half. Why?
The sources don't fully explain Brenda's reasoning, but Cathy found it deeply inadequate and painful. It became another point of contention.
Oh, I can imagine. So the legal side wraps up. When was Bowman sentenced for Aundria's murder?
That was February 2022. He got 35 to 50 years in prison for Aundria's murder.
And that's on top of the life sentences in Virginia?
Correct. It's consecutive. So he starts the Michigan sentence only after the Virginia life sentences are complete, which effectively means he'll never get out.
Where is he now? Still in Virginia?
As far as we know, yes. He's incarcerated in Virginia.
But for Cathy, even with him sentenced, it's not really over, is it?
No, not entirely. She's still fighting.
Fighting for what?
Several things. She wants the adoption formally annulled. She wants Aundria's legal name changed back to Alexis Badger, her birth name.
And the ashes.
And she wants the other half of her daughter's ashes.
So closure is complicated.
Very. Cathy has expressed relief that he confessed and Aundria was found, but also deep ongoing anger about everything that happened, the abuse, the murder, the decades of not knowing.
The documentary Into the Fire really captures that journey, doesn't it? Cathy's fight.
It does. And the director, Ryan White, mentioned something interesting that Cathy had theorized Aundria was in the backyard for a long time. Like an intuition.
A mother's intuition.
Yeah.
That turned out to be horrifyingly right. What about Brenda? Did the investigators think she knew all along?
According to reports on law enforcement interviews, they seem to believe Brenda didn't know about the murder itself or the burial.
But she knew he was violent.
Yes, they acknowledged she was aware of his history of violence, which raises its own set of questions, obviously.
Yeah. And the documentary also pointed fingers at institutions, didn't it? Like the school, the church.
Absolutely. It highlighted how these institutions seemingly failed to protect Aundria, even after she reportedly tried to tell people about the abuse.
Which is another layer of tragedy here, the system failing her.
Yeah, it raises really big, uncomfortable questions about community responsibility, about listening to children.
There was also that description from one of Aundria's friends, calling her a chameleon.
Someone who tried to please everyone, adapt to every situation. You can only imagine that being a coping mechanism for the trauma she was experiencing.
Just heartbreaking. And there were questions raised, I think, in that Reddit AMA about the adoption agency, too.
Yes, specifically about the background check on Dennis Bowman. Given that he had a prior criminal record, how did he get approved to adopt?
Right. Shouldn't that have been a red flag?
You'd think so. It points to potential serious failures in the vetting process by the agency involved.
And the adoptee perspective you mentioned earlier, what did they highlight?
A couple of things. One, just how unusual and powerful Cathy's fight as a biological mother was. That doesn't always happen. And also, thinking about the sliding doors moments, what if Cathy had received support back when Aundria was a baby? Could things have been different?
Yeah, the what-ifs are haunting.
And finally, they raise the issue of accountability for adoption agencies when things go tragically wrong, when abuse or even death occurs in an adoptive home. Is there enough oversight, enough consequences?
These are such difficult, important questions stemming from one case. Before we wrap up, just one last reminder about our sponsor, topnaturalhealth.com. Supporting the show helps us do these deep dives, and you can find discounts using the link in the description.
So reflecting on this whole story, Aundria Bowman's case, Cathy Terkanian's fight, it's just devastating. Loss, systemic failures, but also incredible determination from a mother.
Yeah, Cathy's decade-long battle really did bring a cold case to light, exposing the abuse and the murder. It definitely makes you think hard about how we protect vulnerable kids.
It does. You think about Cathy's intuition, all those missed red flags over the years, the complexities of adoption itself.
What does justice even mean in a case like this? After so much pain, so much time lost,
It's
it's a lot to process.
it really is.
Thank you for joining us on this deep dive today. It was a difficult one, but important to explore.
From all of us here at Pod Session, thanks for listening. Be sure to subscribe and don't forget to visit our sponsor, topnaturalhealth.com, for special promo code pricing on all of the products mentioned in this episode. See you next time.